The implications of Astrobot being completely written off and forgotten about are really interesting because this proves something I've been saying for a long time now, in that the online gaming community talking about a game does not make it popular or successful, right? Echoes of Wisdom and games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Tears of the Kingdom, WarioWare Move It, the list goes on. All of these games were not talked about by the online gaming community when they first came out compared to Astrobot. But it couldn't be more obvious that their long-term success and relevancy is so much more than the 2024 PlayStation Game of the Year, right? The fact that Astrobot fans seriously tried the knack tactic of trying to declare Astrobot better than any Mario game was completely laughable. It was so off base. No actual Mario fan would ever take that seriously, but PlayStation fans were really quick to come out and do that. I suppose they did something similar with like Power World and Pokemon, but with Astrobot, it came off as like a way harder cope because with Mario, you have like decades of wildly different experiences, 2D and 3D across all these different consoles, all these different generations, and Astrobot is one release, supposedly better than every Mario game. Like it was so laughably stupid that I think most serious gamers just kind of laughed it off and didn't talk about it at all, right? And that's what this resulted in, right? There are a lot of PlayStation shills still advocating for Astrobot, calling it the game of the year, one of the best platformers ever made, and yet the actual sales numbers say differently, right? Astrobot is not a likable video game mascot. He's not interesting to look at. The cameos can't sell the game. The homages to PlayStation's history are laughable because PlayStation doesn't have a history. None of the IPs in PlayStation's lineup are in any way iconic or relevant. The fact that people seriously had to point to Ken and Ryu, who are famous mostly from the arcades and the Super Nintendo port, Solid Snake, who debuted on the MSX, uh, Crash Bandicoot, which PlayStation doesn't even own anymore, right? Like you have all of these characters that just have not really amounted to much in the grand scheme of video games, right? Like again, Ken and Ryu are also in Super Smash Bros, right? Again, like when you compare how Astrobot celebrates PlayStation's history compared to Smash Bros, you really get like a sense of scale of just how big the gap is between PlayStation and Nintendo, right? Nintendo's history like covers what, like over 40 years of content, right? You have Pac-Man in there, you have like Spirits, like covering everything from Balloon Fight to like the 13 Sentinels, right? You have fringe RPG characters in as playable characters in the game, right? You have all these different stages, all this wild music, right? What does Astrobot have? Oh, Solid Snake is hiding in a box. Like it's just so much shallower in comparison that really basically everybody outside of the gaming sphere called this out for what it was, right? This was another Hi-Fi Rush. This was another knack. This was an AstroTurf project that game journalists latched onto to try and create the illusion that these third-party developers are still producing major AAA games that people actually care about, right? That they're actually putting time and effort and passion into making fun interesting games that aren't just like another third person shooter or a movie slap game. Or this is meant to be something that is breaking the grain from them, right? This is something that they can heavily market for a couple of months. Like, see, we care about Battletoads, we care about Hi-Fi Rush, we care about Astrobot, only for the team to be kicked to the curb like a year later after the game doesn't sell. And this is the inevitable fate of Astrobot, right? This is the inevitable fate of all these PlayStation IPs because as they fail to perform, as they are completely incapable of competing with the vastly superior Nintendo lineup, right? They are going to be shoved to the side in favor of something new, something that they can market more, something that they can trick audiences with. In this case, I think it will be Ghost of Yobel, right? They are going to like just shove these products aside and make way for the new shiny thing that hopefully can do better. And yeah, I do think that's all Astrobot was. It was just a cope attempt at trying to create an illusion that people are tired or bored of the Nintendo 3D platformer genre, but somehow like PlayStation doing the exact same thing but worse is better somehow. Again, like this is my big thing about these kind of games, right? You know, this applies to Power World, this applies to Hi-Fi Rush, this applies to Astrobot. Like, when have you ever seen a Nintendo game get this kind of praise and hype from the community? Like, when does it ever happen, right? It wasn't with Astral Chain, it wasn't with Arms, it wasn't with Splatoon, really. Like, again, when have you seen like a community actually rally behind a Nintendo game the way they do for these like PlayStation and Xbox games that nobody cares about, right? When does it happen? Like it never does. Like every single time the opposite happens, where people complain, they whine, they cry. Look at what happened to Emio the Smiling Man, right? How could Nintendo putting out a game like that, having such a well received initial trailer, result in like every YouTuber turning their back on it, right? Like everyone refused to cover this game after it was revealed to be like a an adventure game, right? Like, why? The game is great. It's really good. Like, I enjoyed it a lot, and yet we're supposed to pretend that like, oh, we're not interested in story based games. Now, on to covering The Last of Us Part Two. You know, like we know these people are hypocritical, right? They have these insane double standards, right? They're always begging for Nintendo games to have more story, and when they produce one that's almost entirely all story, they try to shit all over it. And again, MEO did fairly well for what it was, right? You know, it was like, you know, just like the remakes did fairly well. But again, where was the support? Where were people like actually coming out and supporting this new entry in an old IP, right? Where were people being excited? Where were the excited people, right? And again, like that applies to everything else that's coming out in the near future, right? You know, Echoes of Wisdom. You know, where was the hype for that? You know, Mario and Luigi's coming out soon. Where was the hype for that? Like, again, all these great looking Nintendo games are going ignored while people go crazy over pretending Astrobot is some like spectacular thing that's worthy of any kind of attention or hype. When really, like, come next year, this is good. This is a game that's going to be completely forgotten about until Sony officially puts the team and IP out to pasture. You know, exactly like what happened with Hi-Fi Rush. It's going to happen, and it's going to be a big controversy when it does, but let it be known that Harmon Smith called it right when the game first came out.